Clara Winslow dropped to her knees in the hot black ash, and the sound that tore out of her throat was something no woman should ever have to make. Rosie. 3 days old. 3 days old. God help her. Twisted against Clara's chest and let out a mewing cry, no louder than a kitten's. Clara's left palm was burned raw to the bone. Her nightgown hem was scorched clean through. Behind her, the last standing beam of the Winslow homestead collapsed into smoke, and Clara pressed her lips to her baby's scalp and rocked and whispered, "They ain't taking you. They ain't taking you. They ain't taking you." Before we go one step further into Clara's story, if you believe no woman should ever have to walk through fire alone, and no mother should have to hold her newborn in the ashes of a life that was stolen from her, take a moment right now and hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss a single chapter of what happens next. And I want you to do something for me, friend. Tell me in the comments what city you're watching from tonight. It warms my heart to see how far Clara's story has traveled, and I read every single one. Now come back with me to that ruined homestead, because out on the East Road, coming slow through the smoke, a rider was already reining in his horse. And in about 4 minutes, a man named Samuel Garrett was going to change Clara Winslow's life, whether she wanted him to or not. Clara didn't hear the hoofbeats at first. The ringing in her ears was too loud. Every breath tasted like pitch and pine, and the smell of something she wouldn't let herself name. Her thoughts kept sliding off the world like water off glass. She heard herself saying Thomas's name over and over, and she couldn't stop. "Thomas, Thomas, Thomas, I'm sorry. Thomas, I couldn't save the house. Thomas, I tried. Thomas," Rosie cried. A real cry this time, weak but real, and Clara snapped back into her body so hard it hurt. "Shh, Mama's here. Mama's here, Angel. Mama's right here." That was when Clara saw the glint. A long curved splinter of iron blackened by heat the broken blade of Thomas's old skinning knife thrown clear when the smokehouse went up. Clara stretched out her good hand and closed her fingers around it. The heat of the metal bit through her palm, and she didn't flinch. She couldn't afford to flinch. Not now. Not with Randall's men somewhere out there and her baby in her arms, and the whole sky above her burning orange and black. That was when she heard the horse. Clara's head came up slow. She didn't stand. She couldn't have stood. But she got her knees under her, shifted Rosie to her right side, and brought the blackened knife blade up in her left fist, burned hand and all, and she waited. The rider came out of the smoke at a walk. A tall, lean man on a dark bay horse, his hat pulled low, his duster streaked with trail dust. He reined up maybe 20 feet from the ruin of her front porch. His horse blew. He didn't say anything for a long moment. Clara could see his eyes under the brim of his hat. Gray. Not a mean gray. Tired gray. But she wasn't fool enough to trust a man's eyes. "Stay back," Clara said. Her voice came out a rasp. "You come one step closer, mister, and I swear on my husband's grave, I'll open you up." The rider didn't move, didn't speak, just looked at her. "You hear me?" Clara's hand shook. The knife shook with it. "You hear me, mister?" "I hear you, ma'am." His voice was low, slow, not the voice of a man in a hurry to do anything. "Then get gone." "Ma'am?" He shifted in the saddle, carefully, hands where she could see them. "I ain't one of Randall Winslow's boys, if that's what you're thinking." Clara's breath caught. "How do you know that name?" "Everybody between here and the Brazos knows that name, ma'am. Seen his riders on the road 2 hours back. They was heading east, away from here, riding hard. That don't mean they ain't coming back." "No, ma'am, it don't." "He let that sit," Rosie whimpered. Clara pressed the baby closer and felt her own tears cut clean tracks through the soot on her cheeks. She didn't wipe them. She didn't dare take her hand off the knife. "Ma'am," the rider said, slow and careful. "My name's Samuel Garrett. I got a place about 4 hours north up under the ridge. I was riding down to Parsons Creek for salt and flour. Wasn't planning on coming up this road at all. Smoke brought me. I don't know you." "No, ma'am, you don't. I don't owe you a thing." "No, ma'am, you don't owe me a thing." "Then why ain't you riding on—" Samuel Garrett was quiet a long moment. His horse shifted its weight from one hoof to the other. Somewhere behind her, deep in the collapsed heart of the house, something heavy cracked and fell. Rosie flinched at the sound. Clara held her tighter. "Ma'am," Samuel said at last, "I can see that baby in your arms." "You leave her out of your mouth." "Yes, ma'am, I will. Only, ma'am, that baby looks mighty new." "She's 3 days old." The words came out before Clara could stop them, and once they were out, she couldn't take them back. 3 days. 3 days old, and already the world had tried to burn her alive. Samuel Garrett took his hat off. Slow. Held it against his chest. 3 days, he said. "Yes." "And you're out here?" "Yes." "Alone?" "Yes, mister. Alone, ma'am." He swallowed. She could see his throat move. "Ma'am, I ain't asking to come closer. I ain't asking anything of you at all. But I got a full canteen on my saddle, and I got a little bit of jerked beef in my pack, and I got a blanket that ain't been slept under in a month, and I'd be much obliged if you'd let me set them down on the ground right there and then back my horse up till you can't see me no more, and then you take what you need." "You think I'm that stupid?" "No, ma'am, I don't think you're stupid." "You think I'll put this knife down for a canteen?" "No, ma'am." "Then what are you playing at, mister?" "I ain't playing at nothing." His voice roughened. "Ma'am, I've rode through a lot of country in my life. I've seen a lot of things. But I ain't never rode up on a woman in the ashes of her own house holding a 3-day-old baby. And I don't aim to ride off from one neither." Clara's throat closed. She didn't cry. She wouldn't cry. Not in front of a stranger. Not with Rosie's little heart beating against her ribs like a trapped sparrow. "Put it down," she said. "Ma'am, the canteen. Put it down, back up, like you said." "Yes, ma'am." She watched every move he made. He dismounted slow. He unhooked the canteen from his saddle horn with one hand, his other hand held out where she could see it. He walked slow to a spot about 10 feet from her, and he set the canteen in the dirt. He set a small oilcloth bundle beside it. He set a folded gray blanket beside that. Then he backed up, step by careful step, until he was beside his horse again. He didn't mount. "Ma'am?" "What?" "The water's fresh. Filled it at Parsons Creek this morning. The jerky's a week old, maybe less. The blanket's clean." "Why are you telling me this?" "So you know what you're getting into your baby." Something inside Clara broke in a place she hadn't known could break any further. She stared at the canteen in the dirt. She stared at the stranger 20 feet off. She stared at her own hand still clutching a broken knife blade like it could save her daughter's life. "My hand won't let go," she whispered. "Ma'am, my hand won't let go of the knife. I'm telling it to. It won't." "That's all right, ma'am. You keep a hold of it." "I can't crawl over there with her. I can't put her down." "No, ma'am, you sure can't." "Then how—" "Ma'am?" Samuel Garrett's voice was very quiet. "I'm going to walk the canteen to you. I'm going to set it in the dirt by your knee. I'm going to back off. You can keep that knife up on me the whole time. If I so much as breathe wrong, you stick me. Is that all right?" Clara's mouth worked. No sound came out. "Ma'am, is that all right?" "Yes," she said. "Yes, all right. But you step wrong, mister." "I won't step wrong." He came. Slow, hands up and open. Clara's eyes never left his. Her hand shook. The knife shook. He stopped an arm's length from her bent at the knees, slow, careful, never breaking her gaze, and set the canteen in the ash beside her right knee. Then the jerky. Then the blanket. Then he stood straight up and backed away with his hands still up one long deliberate step after another until he was at his horse. Clara's whole body was shaking. "Drink, ma'am." "Rosie first." "Ma'am." "Rosie first. Help me with the cap. I can't my hand the burn." "Yes, ma'am." He came back. He didn't ask permission this time. He knelt at arm's length, and his big brown hands were gentle on the canteen cap. He unscrewed it. He held it out. Clara took it in her good hand, still keeping the knife up, and she tipped 3 careful drops onto her fingertip and pressed her fingertip to Rosie's tiny mouth. The baby latched, weakly, but latched. Clara made a sound. She couldn't help it. A broken, grateful sound. "Easy, ma'am. Easy now. She'll take a few more." "I know how to feed my baby." "Yes, ma'am. You surely do." Clara did it again. 2 drops. Rosie's cheek pulsed. Clara let out a breath she felt like she'd been holding for 3 days. "All right," she said. "All right. Now me." She drank. She drank like an animal. She couldn't help it. The water was cold and clean, and it tasted like living. She drank until she choked, and then she drank some more, and when she finally pulled the canteen away, her whole face was wet, and her whole body was trembling, and Samuel Garrett was looking at her like she was something holy and something terrible all at once. "Ma'am?" "What?" "Who did this?" Clara's jaw tightened. She stared at him. "I mean no disrespect, ma'am. I'm only asking because 4 hours from here, I got a homestead and a barn and a lock on my door, and I want to know who I'm locking out." "You ain't locking anybody out for me." "Beg pardon, ma'am. I am." "You don't know me." "No, ma'am, I don't. You don't know the first thing about me. I know your baby is 3 days old. I know your house is gone. I know you're holding a knife like you mean it. That's enough." "Enough for what?" "Enough for a ride." Clara laughed. It was an ugly sound, and it hurt her chest. "A ride? Mister, you don't know what you're offering." "Try me. My husband's name was Thomas Winslow. He died 6 months ago. Fever out on the south pasture took him in a week. I buried him myself because the ground was hard, and the nearest preacher was 40 miles and wouldn't come for a homesteader's wife. I dug it, mister. I dug my own husband's grave in April mud with a shovel that was too big for me. And his brother—" She had to stop. She had to breathe. "His brother Randall Winslow decided the 40 acres my Thomas left me wasn't mine to keep. Said I wasn't fit. Said a woman can't hold land. He said I was loose, mister," to the judge. "He said things about me that weren't true, and he said them in front of men who knew better, and not one of them stood up. Not one. Go on, ma'am. He came to take Rosie 3 days after she was born. 3 days. He said a woman who lost a husband and then birthed a baby alone in a shack must be unfit. He had a paper from the county. He had 2 men with him. I told him get off my porch. He—" Clara's voice cracked. She breathed through her teeth. "He laughed. He laughed, mister. He looked down at my baby in my arms and he said, 'She's got her father's eyes. Shame she'll never know him, and shame she won't know you much longer neither.' And then he left. And then tonight while I was feeding her, I smelled the smoke before I saw it. Somebody poured kerosene on my back wall. Somebody lit it while we were sleeping. My baby and me. Sleeping." Samuel Garrett was very, very still. "Go on, ma'am." "I came out through the kitchen window, burned my hand on the latch, came through with her wrapped in a dishcloth, just a dishcloth, mister, that's all I got on her. A dishcloth from my own kitchen. I couldn't save nothing, not my Thomas's coat, not the cradle he made with his own hands, not the Bible my mama gave me, nothing. Ma'am, I watched it burn. I watched my whole life burn, and I held her, and I watched. Ma'am, listen to me." "What?" "Was it Randall's men?" "I don't know for sure." "Ma'am, I don't know for sure. But you know." Clara closed her eyes. "I know." The silence that came down then was the worst silence of Clara's life. She could hear her own heart. She could hear Rosie breathing small and fast. She could hear Samuel Garrett's horse chewing its bit. And she could hear the thing inside her husband's brother, the thing that had sat across a supper table from her for 3 years and smiled at her with her Thomas's own eyes finally show itself for what it had always been. "Ma'am," Samuel said at last, "I'm going to tell you something, and I want you to hear me out." "Go on." "I live alone. I got a sister who lived with me till 2 years back. She passed. Fever same as your Thomas. Since then, I ain't had nobody. I got a small house, clean, dry, it don't leak. I got a stove, I got blankets. I got goats that are still giving milk, and ma'am, that baby is gonna need milk, and she's gonna need it soon. I got a door that bars from the inside. Mister, let me finish. Clara nodded once. I ain't asking you to trust me. I ain't asking you to like me. I ain't asking you for one solitary thing except this: let me put you and that baby on my horse, and let me walk beside you, and let me take you somewhere with a roof over your head tonight. You can keep that knife the whole ride. You can sleep with the door barred against me. You can leave at first light. I won't say one word against it. Why? Ma'am, why would you do this? Tell me why. Samuel was quiet a long time. Because I rode up on a burning house once before. He said, and I rode on past. I was 17 years old. I told myself it weren't my business. I told myself somebody else would come. I've lived 34 years, ma'am, and I have been learning every single one of them that there ain't no somebody else. There's only what you do or what you don't do. And I ain't riding past tonight. Clara's throat filled. I can't pay you. Didn't ask. I can't promise you anything. Didn't ask for nothing. Randall will come looking. Let him. He has men. So do I some. He has the law. The law don't always ride with the man who bought it, ma'am. Sometimes it rides with the one who's still standing. Clara laughed wet and broken. You talk like a preacher. My mama was one near enough. Come on, ma'am. It's 4 hours and the sun'll be up in 2. I'd like to have you under a roof before somebody comes back to see if their fire took. Clara looked down at her daughter. Rosie's eyes were closed. Her tiny fist was against Clara's collarbone. Her mouth was open in that new baby way, a soft little O of breath. Clara had kept her alive 3 days. She didn't know how. She didn't know with what. But she had. All right, Clara whispered. All right, ma'am. I said all right, mister. Help me up. Yes, ma'am. He came to her. He didn't touch her first. He held out his hand, open palm up, and let her choose. Clara reached across with her burned hand, her knife hand, and she didn't put the knife down. But she let him hook 2 of his fingers around 2 of hers, gentle as catching a bird, and he lifted. His grip was big and dry and rough with rope work, and it closed around hers like it meant it. He lifted her up slow. Her knees gave. He caught her under the elbow. She didn't pull away. Easy, ma'am. I got her. I got her. I know you got her. I'm just getting you. He half carried her to his horse. He lifted her up into the saddle like she weighed nothing, and when she was settled, he put his folded gray blanket around her shoulders and drew it closed under her chin with the care of a man wrapping something precious. Rosie stirred, quieted, slept against her mother's neck. Ready, ma'am? Wait. Clara turned in the saddle. Just once. Just long enough to look back at the black and smoking place where her life had been. The kitchen window, the porch step, the walnut tree Thomas had planted the summer they got married. Gone. All of it gone. She didn't cry. The tears were used up for now. Mr. Garrett? Yes, ma'am. I'm going to kill him. Ma'am. Randall. One way or another, in the law or out of it, I'm going to kill him for this. Samuel Garrett. 34 years old. Stranger. 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 Put his hand on the bay horse's neck and looked up at Clara Winslow in the smoke-black dawn with her newborn at her throat and nothing left in the world but a broken knife and the grit in her eyes. Yes, ma'am, he said. I reckon you are. And he took the reins, and he started walking. The bay horse walked steady. Samuel walked beside it, reins in his left hand, right hand free, and never far from the pistol on his hip. Clara sat the saddle with Rosie at her throat, and the broken knife blade still clenched in her fist, and for the first hour she did not speak at all. Then the baby stopped crying. Clara's spine went straight. Mr. Garrett. Ma'am? She stopped. Stopped what, ma'am? Stopped making noise? Oh, God. Oh, God, mister, she ain't. Samuel reached up. Not to her, to Rosie. He laid 2 fingers gentle as feathers against the baby's cheek. She's warm, ma'am. She ain't crying. No, ma'am, she's sleeping. Babies don't sleep this quiet. Tired babies do. She ain't fed proper since sundown yesterday. 4 more miles, ma'am. 4 miles and she'll have goat's milk warm in her belly, I swear it. 4 miles is a long way when you're 3 days old. Yes, ma'am, it is. He didn't slow. He didn't speed up. He kept walking. You talk to her. What? Talk to her, ma'am. Tell her where she's going. Tell her about her daddy. Baby's here. She's 3 days old. She's still yours. She still hears her mama. Clara opened her mouth. Nothing came. Then in a voice she hardly knew, Rosie, Rosie girl. Your daddy's name was Thomas. He had hands like shovels and a laugh like rainwater, and he loved you before he ever saw you. He put his hand on my belly the night before the fever took him, and he said, Clara, if it's a girl, we'll call her Rosie because she's going to come up fighting through the thorns. That's what he said, baby. That's your name. Samuel Garrett did not look up, but his jaw worked once hard, and he walked on. A mile later, Clara said, How'd your sister die? Ma'am. You said fever. Same as my Thomas. Yes, ma'am. Tell me about her. Name was Ruth. 2 years younger than me. Sharp-tongued. Couldn't cook worth a damn. Mr. Garrett. Ma'am. A woman I ain't never met is gonna need to be spoken of with more than couldn't cook worth a damn. A pause. A long one. She was the only person in my life, Samuel said, who knew what I'd done at 17 and loved me anyway. Clara did not ask. She had learned long ago when to ask and when to wait. She waited. Samuel did not say any more. The sky began to gray. Clara felt Rosie stir against her throat, a small wet mouth searching for something that wasn't there, and she made a sound she did not mean to make. Samuel. Ma'am. Faster. Yes, ma'am. He did not mount up. He started to jog, one hand on the bay's rein, his long legs eating the road. Clara held Rosie with both arms. Now she had tucked the broken knife into the blanket folds at her hip, and she did not remember deciding to. They came up the rise and Clara saw the house. It was small, a low square plain-built thing with a stovepipe and a sod roof and a rail fence and a barn that leaned half a degree off true. There was a lamp burning in the window. Clara's breath caught. Somebody's there. Nobody's there, ma'am. I leave a lamp when I ride out, so I can find my way home in the dark. A man alone leaves a lamp for himself. A man alone's got to, ma'am. Ain't nobody else gonna. She did not know why that made her want to weep. He led the horse up into the porch. He reached up for her. Clara hesitated only one breath, then let him take Rosie first into his 2 big hands, with a care that made her chest crack. He held the baby against his own chest with one arm, like he'd been doing it his whole life, and with his free hand, he lifted Clara down from the saddle. Her knees did not hold. He caught her. He did not comment. He half carried her through the door, and kicked it shut behind them with his boot heel, and dropped the iron bar across it in one smooth motion, and only then did he turn around and give her back her daughter. Sit, ma'am. I can't sit. She needs... Sit. I'll bring the milk. She sat. The chair was hard wood, and it felt like heaven. Samuel moved fast, then out the back door, the sound of a bucket, the soft protest of a goat. He was back in under 3 minutes, with a tin cup steaming in his hand. It's warm off the animal. Ain't hot. Dip your little finger. If it don't burn, she'll take it. I know how to feed a baby, mister. Yes, ma'am, you told me. Clara dipped her finger, pressed it to Rosie's mouth. The baby latched weak, then stronger. Clara's shoulders dropped 2 full inches. Thank God! Thank God! Thank God! Amen, ma'am. Samuel did not watch them. He turned his back like a gentleman and stoked the stove. An hour later, Rosie was asleep with a belly for the first time in half a day, and Clara was wrapped in Samuel's gray blanket in Samuel's own bed, and Samuel was on the other side of the door sitting on the porch with his rifle across his knees. She had barred the inner latch herself. He had not argued. He had told her where the water was, where the biscuits were, where the second rifle hung above the door, and then he had stepped outside and shut it behind him. Clara lay awake the whole night. She did not sleep, but she rested. There was a difference. Her burned palm throbbed. Rosie breathed. Somewhere beyond the sod wall, a coyote called and was answered. Clara kept one hand on her daughter and one hand on the broken knife, and she watched the square of window light go from black to gray to gold. A little after sunup, she heard it. A single horse, coming up the road at a walk. Clara was off the bed before she knew she'd moved. She snatched Rosie up, the baby whimpered no more, and she pressed herself flat against the wall beside the door. Samuel's voice low through the wood. "Ma'am." Inside. "Yes. Rider coming. I know the horse. You stay put." "Who is it?" "Friend. Name's Josiah Reed. Rides for the brand north of mine. I'd trust him with my last dollar." "You'd trust him with mine." A pause. "Ma'am, I wouldn't trust any man with yours without asking you first. That's why I'm telling you his name through this door." Clara closed her eyes, opened them. "Let him in the yard. Not in the house. Not yet." "Yes, ma'am." She listened. She heard the horse come up. She heard boots on the dirt. She heard a man's voice, older gravelly. "Sam, you got company." "I got trouble, Josiah." "Figured. Smoke was visible from my high pasture last night." "You rode over when I heard from the Dutchman that Randall Winslow's boys was drinking at the Parsons Creek Saloon at 2 a.m, smelling like coal oil." Clara's knees almost gave. She pressed her forehead to the door. "Sam," the old voice went on, "it gets worse." "How worse?" Randall rode into Lockhart an hour past dawn, walked straight into the sheriff's and filed a paper. Said there was a tragic fire last night on the Winslow homestead. Said his brother's widow, poor broken thing, perished in the flames with the infant. He did not. He did, Sam. I come straight from Buell, who heard it from the deputy. Randall stood there in front of 3 witnesses and said, "Clara Winslow is dead." And since the child is dead with her, and since he was already named backup guardian on some paper he's got signed by a judge's clerk, he says the 40 acres passes to him clean as creek water. The silence that followed was the kind you could break a tooth on. Inside the house, Clara lifted the bar off the door with one hand and kicked the door open with her bare foot. Both men turned. Josiah Reed was 60 if he was a day. Gray beard, gray hat, eyes like a man who'd seen a lot of country and a lot of people, and liked the country better. He took one look at Clara Winslow standing in Samuel Garrett's doorway, with a 3-day-old baby in her arms, and a broken knife in her fist, and a burned palm and soot still in her hair, and he took his hat off and held it across his chest. "Ma'am." "I ain't dead, Mr. Reed." "No, ma'am, I can see that." "He said I was dead." "Yes, ma'am, he did." "In front of the sheriff?" "Yes, ma'am." "With witnesses?" "Yes, ma'am." Clara laughed. It was a thin, sharp laugh with no joy in it. "Then he's already hung himself. He just don't know it." Josiah looked at Samuel. Samuel looked at Clara. "Ma'am, a man declares a widow dead for her land in front of the law, with the law listening, and then the widow walks in alive, holding her baby. That man ain't just a thief. He's a perjurer. And there is one kind of man a Texas jury hates worse than a cattle rustler, and that's a lying Winslow trying to steal from his own dead brother's wife." Josiah's gray eyebrows climbed into his hat line. "Ma'am, you've been thinking this a while." "I've been thinking this since he laughed on my porch 3 days ago, Mr. Reed. I just didn't have the pieces till now." She turned her eyes on Samuel. "He's given me the whip to beat him with. But I got to walk into Lockhart with my baby in my arms, and I got to do it today before he finds out I'm breathing." Samuel said, "Ma'am." "Don't ma'am me, Mr. Garrett. Not on this. I wasn't gonna. I was gonna say it's a full day's ride, and you ain't slept, and your hand is burned to the bone, and your baby is 3 days old. I know what my baby is." "Ma'am." "Mr. Garrett." Her voice cracked like a whip. "If I wait 1 day, 2, 3, he'll find out I'm alive, and he'll find out where I am, and he'll come here with 12 men and a torch, and he'll finish what he started. You know it. I know it. Mr. Reed knows it. The only safe ground I got left in this world is in front of a judge with a living baby in my arms and a liar at my back. I go today or I don't go at all." Silence. Josiah Reed put his hat back on. Sam. "Josiah, I'll ride with you." "You don't have to." "I know I don't have to. I'm telling you I will." Josiah. "He'll mark you. Randall Winslow's got a long memory." Sam Garrett. The old man turned his gray eyes on him. "I'm 61 years old. My wife is buried under a cottonwood on my east line. My boys are in California and ain't wrote since spring. You think there is one thing on this green earth Randall Winslow can take from me that I'd cross the road to save? I'll ride with you." Samuel Garrett's throat worked. "All right, Josiah. All right." Clara swayed in the doorway. She had not eaten. Her legs were shaking again. Samuel stepped forward without asking and put his big hand under her elbow, and she did not pull away, and he helped her to the chair and sat her down and put the tin cup of goat's milk back into her one good hand and said, "Drink, all of it, then eat a biscuit, then we ride." "Yes, mister." "Samuel." "What?" "My name. If we're riding into a sheriff's office together, I'd be obliged if you'd call me Samuel." Clara looked up at him over the rim of the cup. "Samuel." "Yes, ma'am." "Clara." He stilled, just for a breath. "Clara." "Yes." He nodded once and turned away to see to the horses because he did not trust his face. An hour later they were mounted up. Samuel had dressed Clara's burned hand with a paste of honey and clean linen and wrapped it tight. He had put her in a shirt of Ruth's that he had kept folded in a cedar chest for 2 years without ever being able to throw it away. He had given her Ruth's riding skirt. He had wrapped Rosie in clean cotton and tucked her into a shawl tied at Clara's shoulder so Clara's hands were free. Josiah had fed the baby again, slow and careful, with the patience of a man who had raised 3 sons. Clara watched the old cowboy cradle her daughter and felt a thing crack open inside her chest that she did not have a name for. They were ready to ride. They were in the yard. Samuel tightening the cinch on the bay. Josiah mounting up Clara in the saddle of a placid little roan Samuel had fetched from the barn when the second rider came over the rise. Not Josiah. Not one horse. 3. Coming fast. Josiah saw them first. "Sam." Samuel turned. Looked. His face did not change. "Clara." "Yes." "Get in the house." "Samuel, I'm in the house." "Rosie, too. Bar the door. Take the rifle off the wall. Don't open it for any voice but mine. Go." "Who are they?" "Get in the house, Clara." She went. She did not run, because running with a baby 3 days old is how you drop a baby 3 days old. She walked fast and steady, and she did not look back till she had Rosie set on the bed and the bar across the door, and the rifle down off the pegs, and a shell in the chamber. Only then did she go to the window. 3 men, 3 horses, coming up at a hard lope. The lead rider was not Randall Winslow. The lead rider was bigger than Randall Winslow and meaner, and he wore a tin star on his coat. Samuel Garrett stood in the middle of his own yard with his hand resting easy on the butt of his pistol, and Josiah Reed at his left shoulder, and his face gone as calm and hard and still as the face of a man who had been waiting for this exact ride since he was 17 years old. The lead rider reined up 10 feet from him. "Garrett." "Sheriff." "Heard you might have picked up a stray last night." "Heard wrong." "That's so." "That's so. Funny thing. Man name of Randall Winslow come into my office this morning and swore out that his brother's widow and her baby died in a fire. Now that'd be a sad thing, and an end to it. Only a Mex boy riding herd on the Parsons Creek Road at sunup said he seen a tall man on a bay horse leading a woman and a baby north. Said the woman was hurt and the man was walking. Said they come up this road. Mex boy was mistaken. Was he? He was. The sheriff smiled. It was not a smile. "Garrett, step aside." "No, sir." "I said step aside." "Heard you the first time, Sheriff. My answer ain't changed." "You obstructing an officer of the law?" "I'm standing in my own yard." "With your hand on your gun?" with my hand where it belongs." Josiah Reed spoke then slow and easy, a man who had known the sheriff a long time and was not impressed. "Earl." "Josiah. You got a warrant." "Don't need a warrant for a dead woman, Josiah. You need one for a living man's house." The sheriff's jaw set. Inside the house, Clara Winslow, 26 years old, widow mother, and a woman who 3 days ago had dug her own husband's grave in the April mud, laid the rifle barrel across the sill of Samuel Garrett's front window, and put the front sight on the tin star over the sheriff's heart, and whispered to her sleeping daughter, "It's all right, Rosie girl. Mama's got him. Mama's got him in her sights." The sheriff's name was Earl Brunson, and he had been sheriff of Caldwell County for 9 years, and in 9 years he had learned to read a yard before he stepped into one. He read Samuel Garrett's yard now. He read the old man at Samuel's shoulder. He read the set of Samuel's jaw. And then, very slowly, he read the dark shape behind the front window where a rifle barrel had just caught a bar of morning sun. His horse shifted. He did not. "Garrett?" "Sheriff." "That a woman behind that window?" "That's my window, Sheriff." "Garrett, I swear before God if there's a rifle on me from that window, I am within my rights to—" "Earl." Josiah Reed's voice was soft as saddle leather. "Don't finish that sentence." "Josiah, you old fool. Earl, I knew your daddy. Your daddy rode for my brand the summer of '58. Your daddy was a good man, and he would turn in his grave to hear you ride up on another man's yard and speak for a liar who burned a house down with a baby in it. Now you rein it back. You rein it back right now." Earl Brunson's face went gray. "Josiah, you don't know what you're saying. I know what Randall Winslow said in your office this morning." "Then you know the law." "I know the law says a widow is dead, but the law don't know what I know, Earl." "And what do you know, Josiah?" "I know the widow ain't dead." The two deputies behind the sheriff shifted in their saddles. One of them, a boy no older than 20, let his hand drift toward his rifle stock. Samuel Garrett saw the drift. Samuel Garrett did not move, but his eyes moved, and the boy's hand stopped. "Son," Samuel said quiet. "Don't." The boy swallowed and put his hand back on his horn. Earl Brunson looked at Samuel, looked at Josiah, looked at the window. "Ma'am," he called. From behind the glass, steady as a church bell. "Sheriff." "Ma'am, are you Clara Winslow?" "I am." "Ma'am, is that child with you living?" "She is." "Ma'am, you mind coming out where I can see you?" A pause. "Sheriff, I will come out when I got your word as an officer of the law that I will not be touched, and my baby will not be touched, and no man in your party will lay one finger on Samuel Garrett or Josiah Reed." "Ma'am, I can't." "Then I stay in the window, Sheriff, and the rifle stays where it is." Earl Brunson took his hat off. He ran his hand through his thinning hair. He looked up at the sky like he was asking it a favor. "Ma'am, you got my word. On my daddy's name. Not a hand laid. Sheriff, that's a strong oath." "I mean it strong, ma'am." Clara believed him. She did not know why she believed him, but she did, and she had learned long ago to trust the part of herself that knew a true oath from a false one. She set the rifle down. She picked up Rosie. She unbarred the door. She came out onto that porch with her daughter in her arms and her burned hand wrapped in linen and her dead husband's brother's fire still in her hair, and she walked down the 3 steps, and she stood beside Samuel Garrett, and she lifted her chin, and she looked Earl Brunson in the eye. "Sheriff Brunson." "Ma'am." "I did not die last night." "No, ma'am, you did not." "My daughter did not die last night." "No, ma'am." "Randall Winslow told you we did." "Yes, ma'am." "In your office with witnesses, and he signed a paper about my land." "Yes, ma'am." "Sheriff, you're going to ride me into Lockhart right now." "Ma'am." "You're going to ride me into Lockhart, and you're going to walk me into that courthouse, me and this baby alive, and you're going to let me stand in front of the judge and say my name. And then, Sheriff, you're going to arrest the man who tried to burn me to death for my 40 acres. Earl Brunson was a long time answering, "Ma'am, I can't arrest a man on your word alone. Sheriff." You got 3 witnesses heard him declare me dead in your office. You got a burned house. You got the widow and the orphan standing here breathing. You got the Parsons Creek barkeep who served his men at 2 in the morning smelling like coal oil. You got a ride into Lockhart to do, and you got a choice to make on the way. I ain't telling you how to do your job. I'm telling you that when we get to that courthouse, one of us is going to jail, and if it ain't him, Sheriff, it is going to be you." Behind her very quiet, Samuel Garrett said, "Clara, I mean it, Samuel. I know you mean it. I was just going to say I'm proud." Earl Brunson put his hat back on. "Ma'am, mount up." They rode 4 abreast down the Lockhart Road at a pace that did not spare the horses. The sun climbed. Rosie fussed twice and slept. Clara's burned hand ached so deep it was a second heartbeat, but she did not speak of it because what was a burned hand on the road to Lockhart? 2 hours in, Josiah pulled his horse up alongside Samuel's and dropped his voice. "Sam?" "Josiah. Earl's too quiet. I noticed. He ain't asked her a question in an hour. I noticed that too. Means he's already decided." "Yep." "Which way you reckon?" "Can't tell yet." "Sam." "Josiah. If it goes wrong in that courtroom, you get her and the baby out the side door. Don't wait for me." Samuel did not answer. "Sam, you hear me. I hear you. Promise me." "Josiah, I ain't leaving you in any courthouse." "Promise me, Sam. That woman is what matters now. Not you, not me. Her and that child. Promise me." A long silence with only the sound of the horses. "I promise," Samuel said. They hit the edge of Lockhart at a little after 2 in the afternoon. The town was not large, 1 main street, 1 saloon, 1 church, 1 courthouse of whitewashed timber, with a bell in a little cupola. Word travels in towns that small. By the time Earl Brunson's little party rode up to the courthouse hitching rail, there were already 40 people in the street. They had seen the sheriff ride out that morning. They had heard he was hunting a fire. They saw now a woman in the saddle with a baby at her breast, and they knew, every one of them, that the fire had not taken what they'd been told. A woman in a blue calico dress stepped out of the mercantile with her hand over her mouth. Dear Lord, that's Clara Winslow." "It ain't." It is. "Mary, that's Thomas Winslow's widow. I thought we all thought, she's alive." With the baby Mary." The word went through the street like a spark through dry grass. By the time Samuel Garrett lifted Clara down off the roan, there were 60 people. By the time they walked up the 3 courthouse steps, there were 80. By the time Earl Brunson pushed open the courtroom door and stood aside to let Clara walk in. First, there were 100, and they were coming in behind her, quiet as a church. Every one of them because a town that had been told a lie at dawn was about to see it killed at noon. Randall Winslow was standing at the front of the courtroom with his hat in his hand and a paper on the clerk's desk. He was not a big man. Thomas had been bigger, but he had Thomas's eyes, and Clara had learned over 3 years to hate those eyes on that face, because they were the eyes of a man who had never earned a thing in his life and resented every soul who had. He turned when the door opened. He turned to see Earl Brunson. He did not for the first breath see Clara. Then he did. Clara would remember his face for the rest of her life. It went white under the tan. Then gray. Then green. Then it set hard like clay in a kiln, and she saw the exact second the man decided to lie his way out or die trying. "Clara." His voice was thick. "Clara, my God. My God. We thought I rode in this morning in grief. I told the sheriff I was told by my own foreman that you... Oh, Clara, you're alive." He took a step toward her with his arms half out. Samuel Garrett stepped between them. He did not say anything. He just stepped between them, and Randall Winslow stopped as if he had walked into a wall. "Samuel Garrett." Randall's voice changed. "This is a family matter. Step aside." "No, sir." "Who are you to a Winslow?" "I'm a man standing in front of the lady. That'll do." Judge Whitmore banged his gavel 3 sharp strokes. "Order! Order in my court! Sheriff Brunson, what is the meaning of this?" Earl Brunson took off his hat. Your Honor, the widow Clara Winslow is not dead. Evidently, Sheriff. Your Honor, at 8:12 this morning in my office, Mr. Randall Winslow here present swore out that she was dead. He signed a paper to that effect. He moved under that paper to take possession of 40 acres of the Brazos Bottom belonging to his late brother's estate. The judge's eyes moved to Randall. They were not friendly eyes. Mr. Winslow, Your Honor. Your Honor, I was misinformed. My foreman came to me at dawn hysterical, saying the homestead had burned, and there were remains, Your Honor. I acted in grief. Your foreman's name, Mr. Winslow. His name is Bill Hooper, Your Honor. Bailiff, fetch Bill Hooper. I want him in this courtroom within the hour. Your Honor, he may have ridden out. Then fetch him off the road. The gavel came down again. Clara Winslow stepped forward. She did it before anyone told her she could. She stepped forward with Rosie in her arms, and her burned hand hanging at her side, and she walked past Samuel, past Randall, past Earl Brunson, and she stopped in front of the bench. Your Honor. Ma'am, my name is Clara Winslow. I am the widow of Thomas Winslow, deceased of the 40-acre parcel on the Brazos Bottom. This is my daughter Rosie, 3 days old. Last night at approximately 11 in the evening, someone poured kerosene on the back wall of my home while my child and I were sleeping and set it on fire. I escaped through the kitchen window with this baby in a dishcloth. I lost everything I owned except the dishcloth, my baby, and the clothes on my back. Ma'am, do you accuse a person by name? Your Honor, I accuse Randall Winslow, my late husband's brother, of ordering the burning of my home with intent to kill me and my child for the purpose of obtaining my late husband's land by fraudulent claim. The courtroom did not make a sound. Randall Winslow's face did something then that Clara had not seen before. It cracked. Not the whole thing, just a hairline across it, but enough. Enough for every one of the 100 people crowded into that courtroom to see. Your Honor, Randall's voice was tight. This is absurd. This woman has been known to be unstable since my brother's death. I have witnesses. I have filed papers. I have... Mr. Winslow. Yes, Your Honor. Did you at 8:12 this morning in the sheriff's office swear out under oath that the woman now standing before me was dead? Your Honor, I was grieving. Yes or no, Mr. Winslow? A long silence. Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Winslow, who told you she was dead? Your Honor, my foreman. Bill Hooper. Yes, Your Honor. The same Bill Hooper who is now being fetched to this courtroom. Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Winslow, if Bill Hooper tells me he told you no such thing, what will you say then? Randall Winslow did not answer. Judge Whitmore leaned forward. Mr. Winslow, I have sat on this bench for 11 years. I have been lied to by better men than you. I have been lied to by worse men than you. But I do not recall in 11 years ever being lied to so early and so badly and in front of so many people as this. Sheriff Brunson. Your Honor, place Mr. Randall Winslow under arrest on suspicion of arson, attempted murder of a woman, attempted murder of an infant, and perjury committed under oath in an officer's lawful presence. Hold him without bond pending the arrival of Bill Hooper. If Bill Hooper confirms this woman's account, we will add further charges. Your Honor. Randall's voice cracked. Your Honor, you cannot my family, my name. Your family name, Mr. Winslow, was carried by your brother. Your brother is in the ground. This woman carried him too, and she carries his child, and she carries herself with more dignity in a burned shift than you have ever carried yourself in a Sunday coat. Sheriff, take him. Earl Brunson crossed the courtroom in 4 long strides and took Randall Winslow by the elbow. Randall jerked. Earl did not let go. Come on, Randall. Earl, we have an understanding. We don't have nothing no more, Randall. Earl, walk, Randall. You walk or I drag you. Your pick. He walked. The courtroom was silent until the door closed behind them. Then from somewhere in the back, a woman in a blue calico dress began to clap. Just her at first, slow, then another, then the whole 100 of them standing clapping, some of them crying, and Clara Winslow stood in the center of that sound with her 3-day-old daughter against her chest and her knees almost gone under her, and she did not cry because she had used up her tears the night before in the ashes. Judge Whitmore banged his gavel once. The clapping died. "Mrs. Winslow?" "Your Honor, the 40 acres on the Brazos Bottom is the property of your late husband's estate, held in trust for your daughter and administered by you as her mother and natural guardian. That matter is settled, and I will sign the order this afternoon. You are also entitled to bring civil suit against Mr. Winslow's estate for the destruction of your home, and I will direct the clerk to assist you in that filing at no cost." "Thank you, Your Honor. Ma'am, one more thing. Your Honor, you have somewhere safe to sleep tonight." Clara turned her head. She looked at Samuel Garrett standing 3 feet behind her, with his hat in his hands, and his face gone raw, with something she did not yet have a name for. "Yes, Your Honor," she said. "I have somewhere safe to sleep tonight." "Good." The judge set the gavel down. "Court is adjourned." And it would have ended there. It would have been a clean, hard, honest victory, the kind a widow dreams of in the ashes. Except that when Clara turned to walk out of that courtroom on Samuel Garrett's arm, with Josiah Reed 1 step behind her, and the town of Lockhart parting for her like water, the bailiff came jogging back in through the side door with his hat in his hand and his face the color of whey, and he went straight to Judge Whitmore's bench and leaned in and whispered 3 sentences. And Judge Whitmore's face changed. "Sheriff Brunson?" Earl Brunson stuck his head back in from the hallway. "Your Honor, Earl, Bill Hooper has been found." "Where?" "In the creek behind the Winslow South pasture, with a bullet in the back of his head. The bailiff says he's been dead since before sunup." Clara Winslow's knees gave. Samuel caught her. And in the silence that followed, Judge Whitmore said very quietly, what every soul in that courtroom had just understood at the same time, that Randall Winslow had not been alone in this, and that whoever had killed Bill Hooper to shut his mouth was still out there, and was not finished. The courtroom went from 100 breaths to none. Clara Winslow, on her knees on the pine plank floor with her daughter still clutched against her collarbone, heard the judge's words come to her through water. "Bullet in the back of his head. Before sunup. Wasn't finished." Samuel Garrett was down on one knee beside her with his arm under her elbow and his other hand steadying her back. "Clara, breathe. Clara, look at me." "Samuel. Samuel, there's another one. I heard him." "There's another one, Samuel. Randall didn't set that fire alone. Randall didn't kill Hooper from a jail cell. There's a man walking loose right now who wants my 40 acres bad enough to kill 3 people for it." "4. "What? 4 people, Clara. You, the baby, Hooper, and whoever he kills next to cover his tracks." Josiah Reed came up on her other side. "Sam, get her up. This ain't the place." "Where is the place?" "The back room. Judge's chambers. Earl will hold the hallway." "Up, ma'am. Up now." They got her up. Rosie stirred and whimpered, and Clara pressed her lips to her daughter's head and breathed through her teeth until the shaking in her hands was a thing she could fit inside her palms again. Judge Whitmore was already off his bench. "In here. Mrs. Winslow, Garrett, Reed, in here now. Bailiff, you bar that door behind us." They went. The chambers were a small room, with a desk and a kettle on a pot-belly stove and 2 hard chairs. The judge shut the door himself and turned the key, and then he turned around and looked at Clara Winslow with an expression she would remember the rest of her life. "Ma'am, I am going to ask you a question, and I am going to need a straight answer." "Ask it, Your Honor." "Who besides Randall Winslow stood to gain from your 40 acres?" Clara opened her mouth, closed it. I don't know, Your Honor." "Ma'am, think." "Your Honor, the land is bottomland. It's got water. It's got timber. It's good graze. But 40 acres don't make a man rich. It makes a family live. Unless what, Your Honor?" Judge Whitmore looked at Josiah Reed. "Josiah, tell her." Josiah took his hat off. He turned it in his hands twice before he spoke. "Ma'am, You know the rail survey come through the county last August. I heard of it. The survey staked a line, ma'am. A line from San Antonio up to the Brazos Crossing. That line, ma'am, runs right across the north end of your 40. Clara's breath left her. Josiah. Yes, ma'am. Josiah, that land is worth 10 times what your Thomas paid for it, ma'am. Maybe 20 if the depot goes where they're saying. And the railroad, ma'am, don't buy from widows who might hold out for a fair price. The railroad buys from men who already own the paper. Then Randall. Randall never had the money to chase a rail deal, ma'am. Randall drinks. Randall gambles. Randall is somebody's front man. Whose? Josiah looked at the judge. The judge nodded once. Ma'am, Josiah said, have you had any callers at your homestead in the last 2 months? Any man come by polite as sugar offering to buy the place? Clara's face went still. Yes. Describe him. A man in a gray suit, thin, clean-shaven, city hands. He come out in a buggy with a driver. He said he was from a land trust in Austin. He said he would pay $2 an acre because my Thomas was not yet cold in the ground, and he wished to ease a widow's burden. He said it just like that, Josiah. Ease a widow's burden. I told him off my porch. Name, ma'am. He gave me a card. I kept it in the kitchen drawer. It burned with the house. Do you remember the name? Clara closed her eyes. She was 3 days without sleep, and her baby had eaten, and her burned hand throbbed, and her mind was a white field of ash. But she had always had a memory for names. Thomas used to tease her about it. Holloway, she said. Ezra Holloway. Holloway Land Trust, Austin, Texas. Judge Whitmore's face did a thing. Your Honor, Mrs. Winslow, Ezra Holloway is in Lockhart. I saw him at breakfast in the hotel dining room at 7 this morning. He was having eggs with Randall Winslow. The room went quiet in a way that was worse than silent. Your Honor, Samuel said. Is he still in town? I don't know, Garrett. If he's a man with any sense at all, he is on the road to Austin right now. And if he ain't a man with any sense, then he is on the road to finish what he started. Samuel Garrett did not curse. He was not a cursing man. But his jaw set and his shoulders dropped, and he looked at Clara Winslow with his gray eyes gone flat and hard as river stones. Clara. Samuel. We got to get back to the homestead. Your homestead. My homestead. My place. Because if Ezra Holloway is running, he is running to Austin. But if he ain't, he is going to the last place he thinks you'd go, which is the place where his partner told him he'd burned you dead. My place is Ash. That's what he thinks. But he don't know you, Clara. He don't know you walked out. He don't know about Josiah. He don't know about me. If he's at your place, he is looking for a body and a cold fire. He is not looking for 3 armed riders. Samuel, I have my baby. I know you have your baby. I ain't riding into a gun with my baby. No, ma'am, you ain't. You're staying here in these chambers with His Honor and the bailiff and Earl Brunson's deputy between you and the world. Josiah and I will ride. No. Clara. I said no, Samuel Garrett. I am not sitting in a room while 2 men ride to die for my 40 acres. I have ridden alone with this child through a burning night, and I have faced that sheriff down a rifle barrel, and I have stood in this courtroom and put that man in irons, and I will be there when the last one falls. I will be there. Samuel's jaw worked. Clara. Rosie stays. Rosie stays with the judge's wife or with Mrs. Calloway from the Mercantile. I saw her in the crowd. She has 6 children and a kind face. Rosie stays and I ride. Clara, your hand. My good hand pulls a trigger fine, Samuel. Have you ever shot a man? No. Clara. But I have buried one, and I have birthed one. And I reckon what's left ain't so hard. Josiah Reed made a sound that was almost a laugh and almost not. Sam. Josiah. That's your ride, Sam? Don't argue with her. You ain't gonna win. Samuel looked at Clara. Clara looked back. All right, he said. All right, Clara. You ride. Mrs. Calloway of the Mercantile was sent for, and came in 10 minutes with her bonnet still untied and her eyes wet. She took Rosie from Clara's arms with the practiced ease of a woman who had raised 6 and lost 2 and knew the weight of 3 days. "Ma'am, I will not put her down till you come for her." "Mrs. Calloway, not 1 minute, ma'am. Not for supper. Not for bed. I will sit in this judge's chair with your baby in my arms till you walk through that door. And if you do not walk through that door, ma'am, then this child has a home with me and my Henry, and she will be raised knowing her mama's name and her mama's courage, and every acre of her land will be held for her till she is of age. You hear me?" Clara could not speak. She nodded. She kissed Rosie's forehead. She kissed her cheek. She smelled her for one long breath of milk and new skin, and Samuel Garrett's clean gray blanket. Then she handed her daughter to a woman she had spoken to twice in her life, and she walked out of that room without looking back, because she knew if she looked back, she would not leave. They took 3 fresh horses from Earl Brunson's jail yard. Earl did not ride. Earl had a prisoner to hold and a town to keep. He sent his older deputy, a man named Walt Murdoch, who had fought at Palmito Ranch and did not spook. The 4 of them rode south. Samuel rode point. Josiah flanked left. Walt Murdoch flanked right. Clara rode in the pocket between them with a Winchester across her saddle, and her burned hand wrapped fresh in clean linen, and her hair still smelling of smoke. 2 miles out of town, Josiah spurred up alongside her. "Ma'am?" "Josiah, I want to tell you something." "Go on." "My wife's name was Mary. She died of the bloody flux in 72. She was 44 years old, and she never raised her voice at me one time in 26 years of marriage. I have been lonesome every single day since. Every single day, ma'am. I'm sorry, Josiah. Don't be. I'm telling you because I want you to know why I'm riding. I ain't riding for Sam. I love Sam like my own, but I ain't riding for Sam. I'm riding because Mary Reed would have climbed out of her grave and kicked me down the porch if I'd stayed home today. That's all. That's why." Josiah. "Ma'am." "Thank you." "You don't thank me yet, ma'am. Thank me on the way back." They came up on the burned homestead from the east at a little after 6 in the evening. Samuel reined in a half-mile short behind a line of mesquite. "Josiah." "I see it." 2 horses at the rail." "I see 'em." "And a buggy." "Yep." Walt Murdoch squinted. "That's Holloway's buggy. I seen it in town last week." "Anybody in the yard?" "Can't tell from here." Samuel turned in the saddle. "Clara." "Samuel." "You stay here, behind this line of brush, rifle on the road. If a man comes back up this road who ain't me, or Josiah, or Walt, you put him down. You hear me?" "I hear you." "Say it back to me. If a man comes up this road who ain't you, or Josiah, or Walt, I put him down." "Good." "Samuel." "Clara." "Don't die." He looked at her a long second. His gray eyes under the brim of his hat, the dust on his face, his mouth tight. "No, ma'am," he said. "I don't plan to." Then he was gone. The 3 of them circling wide, Samuel left Josiah right Walt straight up the wagon track on foot, rifle low. Clara waited. She had not known in 26 years of living that a minute could be that long. Her hands cramped on the Winchester. Her burned palm bled through the linen. Rosie was an hour and a half away and 100 miles away, and she could feel her daughter's weight against her chest, even though her arms were empty, and she thought, if they do not come back, I ride to Lockhart. I take my baby, I go north, I go to the territories, I do not stop until this child is a woman, and I do not let the world take her. Then she heard the first shot. 1 shot, a pistol, from the yard. She jerked in the saddle. Her horse stamped. A second shot, a rifle this time, Josiah's. Then 3 more fast overlapping. A man shouting again. Then silence. A long silence. Clara's heart beat 60 times in that silence. She counted them. Then a figure stepped out of the tree line on the road ahead of her. Not Samuel, not Josiah, not Walt. A thin man, clean-shaven, gray suit, city hands, running. running straight up the road toward her hiding place with a pistol in his hand, and blood on his sleeve, and no hat on his head. Ezra Holloway, the man who had offered to ease her widow's burden. He had not seen her yet. Clara Winslow slid off her horse. Quiet. She had grown up on a farm, and she knew how to get down off a horse without a sound. She went to one knee behind the mesquite. She set the Winchester across a low branch. She put the front sight on Ezra Holloway's chest. He came on at a dead run, 30 yards, 20. At 15 yards, she said, "Mr. Holloway." He stopped so hard he almost fell. Who's there?" "Mr. Holloway. Drop the pistol." "Who is that? Who?" "Drop it, Mr. Holloway. Drop it in the dirt." I can't see you. Ma'am, if you are a lady, please. There has been a terrible confusion. I am an officer of a respectable land trust. There are men chasing me who mean me harm." "Drop it." "Ma'am, I beg you." "Mr. Holloway, my name is Clara Winslow. I am the widow you came to see in a buggy 2 months ago. I am the widow whose house you paid to burn. I am the mother of the baby you tried to kill. My rifle is on your heart, sir. And if you do not drop that pistol in the next 3 seconds, I will put a round through you, and I will sleep like a child tonight. 1. His face had gone the color of ash. 2. Ma'am, you don't understand. It was Winslow. It was all Winslow. I was only an investor. I had no... 3. He dropped the pistol. On your knees, Mr. Holloway. Ma'am, on your knees. He went down. Hands behind your head. He put them there. Clara stood up slow behind her mesquite and walked out onto the road with the Winchester level on him and the sun at her back. Her hands did not shake. She had thought they would. They did not. Mr. Holloway. Ma'am, my daughter is 3 days old. Ma'am, please. I want you to say it, Mr. Holloway. I want you to say out loud on this road in front of God what you did. Ma'am, Say it. I paid 2 men of Randall's, to set the fire. I did not know there was a baby. I swear I did not. You knew. Ma'am, You knew because you came to my porch and you saw I was with child. You knew, Mr. Holloway. He began to cry. Clara Winslow stood in the road with a rifle on a weeping man, and she did not cry with him, and she did not shoot him either, and she did not speak. She waited. She waited for 3 sets of hoofbeats on the road behind him, and when they came, when she saw Samuel Garrett riding point with Josiah and Walt Murdoch behind him, all 3 of them alive and upright, and one of them leading a riderless horse. She lowered the Winchester 1 careful inch at a time, and did not take her eyes off Ezra Holloway until Samuel was down off his horse, and had the pistol kicked away in the dirt, and had Holloway's hands behind his back in Walt Murdoch's manacles. Then and only then did Clara Winslow sit down in the road. Samuel came to her, knelt in front of her. Clara. Samuel. Are you all right? I held him. I know you did. I held him, Samuel. I had him in the sights, and I held him. I wanted to, but I held him for Rosie, so she ain't ever got to know her mama killed a man. Clara. Yes. Come on, honey. Come on. Let's go get your baby. She let him lift her. She let him put her up on the horse. She let him walk beside her like he had walked beside her the night before, with the reins in his left hand and his right hand on her knee, quiet and steady, while Josiah and Walt rode behind with Ezra Holloway trussed across a saddle like a sack of grain. The sun was setting on the Lockhart Road when they rode back into town. Mrs. Calloway was standing on the porch of the Mercantile with Rosie in her arms, and Rosie was howling full-throated, furious alive, the loudest sound Clara had ever heard in her life. Clara Winslow slid off the horse and ran, burned hand and all, and took her daughter back into her arms, and only then, finally, after 3 days and a burning and a courtroom and a road, did she let herself cry. Samuel Garrett stood on the porch behind her, with his hat in his hands and the dust of a hard ride on his boots, and he did not say a word. He only watched her hold her baby, and his face was the face of a man who has just understood what the rest of his life is going to be about, and is not afraid of it. That night, Clara Winslow slept in a real bed for the first time in 4 days, in a clean room above Mrs. Calloway's Mercantile, with Rosie in a drawer lined with quilts beside her, and Samuel Garrett on a chair in the hallway outside her door, with a rifle across his knees, because he would not be moved from it. She had argued. She had lost. She slept 12 hours. When she woke, there was sunlight on the floorboards, and a tin cup of coffee on the washstand, and her burned hand had been rebandaged in the night by hands she did not remember. She lay there for a long minute and listened. Rosie breathing. Samuel's boots creaking on the chair outside. A woman humming downstairs. The world had not ended. The world, in fact, was beginning. She got up. Over the next 2 weeks, things happened fast, the way they do when a lie that has been holding up a dozen other lies finally breaks. Randall Winslow went before the grand jury on a Tuesday and was bound over for trial on charges of arson, attempted murder, perjury, and conspiracy. Ezra Holloway, faced with the prospect of hanging, turned state's evidence inside of 3 hours, and the list of names he gave Earl Brunson stretched from Lockhart to Austin, and took in 2 railroad men, a county clerk, and a judge's nephew. The Holloway Land Trust was dissolved by the end of the month. The 40 acres of Brazos Bottom land was held by written order of Judge Whitmore in trust for the minor child. Rosie Winslow, under the guardianship of her mother and Clara, signed her name to the papers with her left hand because her right was still healing. The railroad, when it came through the county 8 months later, paid Clara Winslow's estate $1,400 for a right-of-way across the north corner of her 40. She did not spend a penny of it. She put it in a bank in Austin in Rosie's name, and there it would stay, she said, until the girl was 18 and old enough to choose what it was for. But those were papers, and papers are not the story. The story was what happened on the 5th day after the fire, when Samuel Garrett came into the kitchen above the mercantile where Clara was nursing Rosie in a rocking chair Mrs. Calloway had brought up from the stockroom, and he stood in the doorway with his hat in his hands and said, "Ma'am." "Samuel." "Clara." "Clara, what is it?" "I rode out to my place this morning." "Is it all right?" "It's all right. Goats are fine, chickens laid, door held." "Good." "Ma'am." "Samuel, you keep saying ma'am. Sit down." He sat. "Clara?" "Yes." "Clara, I can't keep sleeping in a chair in a mercantile hallway." "No, Samuel, you can't. You look terrible." "Thank you." "I mean it kindly." "I know you do." He turned his hat in his hands. "Clara, the thing is, I don't know what you want to do." "About what?" "About after. About where you go. About where Rosie grows up." She looked at him over her daughter's sleeping head. His gray eyes. His dust. His hands that had held her baby the first night like he had been born holding babies. His chair in the hallway for 4 nights running. "Samuel Garrett." "Ma'am." "Are you asking me to come back to your homestead?" "Yes, ma'am." "As what?" He did not answer for a long time. "As whatever you want to be there as," he said at last. "As a woman who needed a roof till she got her feet. As a neighbor if you want to rebuild your own place and live on your own land. As Clara. I ain't saying the other thing. Not now. Not for a long time. You buried a husband 6 months ago, and you birthed a baby 4 days ago, and you walked through a fire, and a courtroom, and a gunfight. And I am not such a fool as to come into a kitchen 4 days later and ask a woman what I want to ask her. I am asking you to come home because you ain't got one. And I got one, and it has a barred door and a milking goat and a spare room that used to be my sister's." Clara's throat closed. "Samuel." "Yes." "Are you going to wait for me?" "Yes, ma'am, I am." "How long?" "Long as it takes." "What if it's a year?" "All right." "What if it's 5?" "All right." "What if I never?" "Clara." "What?" "I ain't asking for a promise. I ain't asking for a hope. I am telling you where I live, and I am telling you the door is open, and I am telling you that it is going to stay open for as long as I am alive to keep it open. That is all I am telling you." She looked down at Rosie. Her daughter's tiny fingers were curled around the edge of the blanket. 4 days old. 4 days in a world that had tried already to kill her and had failed because a man had come down a smoke-filled road at dawn and had not ridden past. "All right," Clara said. "All right. All right, Samuel. We'll come home." He let out a breath he seemed to have been holding since the porch. "Thank you, ma'am." Clara. She went back to the homestead with him that afternoon, and she did not go back to the ruin of her own house except to walk the ground once with Samuel beside her, and to stand where her kitchen had been, and say goodbye to a life she had loved, and a husband she had loved, and a self she had been. Then she turned her back on it, and she did not cry, because the tears for that had been cried in the ashes, and the tears left in her now were for the living. She lived in Ruth's old room. Samuel lived in his. The door between them stayed shut because he would not have it any other way, and because she would not have it any other way either, not yet. But the door to the hallway, and the door to the kitchen, and the door to the yard stayed open all day long. And Rosie learned to crawl on Samuel's kitchen floor, and to stand up on Samuel's kitchen chair, and her first word was not Mama, and it was not Papa, and it was a perfectly good Western word that Clara would tell the story of for the rest of her life. It was horse. Samuel cried when she said it. He did not think Clara saw. She saw. The homestead grew. Josiah Reed came for supper twice a week and taught Rosie how to whistle through a blade of grass before she was 2 years old. Mrs. Calloway came up from Lockhart every other Sunday with her husband Henry and a pie and stayed till the lamp was lit. Walt Murdoch got promoted to sheriff when Earl Brunson retired, and he rode out twice a year to check on the widow Winslow and her baby, and to drink coffee on Samuel Garrett's porch, and to say every time he left, "Any trouble, ma'am, you send word. Lockhart owes you a debt we ain't finished paying." Clara would smile and say, "Walt, you have paid it in full, twice." He would tip his hat and ride off. He would be back in 6 months. They both knew it. A year and 2 months after the fire, on a cold, bright morning in late September, Clara Winslow walked out to the goat shed at sunup and found Samuel Garrett already there, mucking out, his sleeves rolled and his breath white in the air. She leaned on the post and watched him a minute. He did not see her. "Samuel." "Clara, mornin'. You're up early." "Samuel." "Ma'am, it's time." He stopped with the fork in his hand. "Clara." "I said it's time." "Clara, you sure?" "I'm sure, Samuel. I have been sure for 4 months. I was waiting till I was sure I was sure." He set the fork down against the wall. He walked over to her. He did not touch her yet. He stood 1 step away, and he looked at her in the thin gold light. "Clara Winslow, will you marry me?" "Yes, Samuel Garrett, I will." He put his hand against her cheek. It was cold from the morning, and rough from the fork handle, and it smelled of hay. She turned her face into it and closed her eyes. "Clara." "Yes. I have been waiting a year and 2 months to do that." "I know you have." "I would have waited 5 more." "I know you would have." "That's why." "That's why what?" "That's why I love you. That's why." She opened her eyes. "Samuel Garrett." "Yes. I love you too." They were married 3 weeks later on the porch of the homestead by a preacher who had ridden up from Lockhart with Rosie Winslow 1 year and 4 months old, walking on her own 2 feet, now in a white pinafore. Mrs. Calloway had sewn with her own hands, holding a fistful of late wildflowers, standing between her mother and the man she had already been calling Papa for 3 months before either grown-up had the courage to say the word out loud. Josiah Reed stood up for Samuel. Mrs. Calloway stood up for Clara. Walt Murdoch came in his sheriff's coat with his hat in his hands and cried openly and was not ashamed. Earl Brunson retired, and thinner and happier than he had been in all his years, behind the star came too, and shook Samuel's hand and kissed Clara's cheek, and held Rosie on his knee during the supper after, and said, "Ma'am, the first time I laid eyes on you, you had a rifle on my heart. I have never in my life been more grateful to be held at gunpoint by a decent woman." Clara laughed till she cried. Rosie grew up on the homestead. She grew up knowing 2 stories told to her as she got old enough to hear them. The first story was about her father, Thomas Winslow, who had hands like shovels and a laugh like rainwater, and who had put his hand on her mother's belly the night before the fever took him, and had named her Rosie because she was going to come up fighting through the thorns. Clara told her that story. Clara would never stop telling her that story. The second story was about a man named Samuel Garrett, who had been riding down a road at dawn to buy salt and flour, and had smelled smoke and had turned his horse. Samuel told her that story. Samuel would say every time, "I did not save your mama Rosie. Your mama saved herself. She was standing up in those ashes with a knife in her hand when I rode up. All I done was offer her a canteen and a blanket and a ride. She done the rest." And Rosie growing up would hear both stories, and she would understand something that most children do not understand until they are very much older. That love is not one thing. It is not a meeting on a road, and it is not a single rescue. It is a man who puts a lamp in his own window when he rides out so he can find his way home in the dark. It is a woman who walks into a courtroom with a 3-day-old baby and stares down a liar. It is a chair in a hallway for 4 nights running. It is a door that stays open because the other person might someday come through it. It is a promise made in a goat shed at sunup. The 40 acres on the Brazos Bottom were never sold. When Rosie turned 18, Clara put the bank book into her daughter's hands and said, "It's yours. It has always been yours. Your daddy Thomas bought it, and your daddy Samuel kept it, and your mama held it. It's yours to do with what you choose." Rosie chose to keep the land, and to build on it, and to bring her own husband home there, and to raise her own children on the bottom ground where her father was buried, and where her mother had once stood in the ashes and said no. Clara Winslow Garrett lived to be 71 years old. She buried Samuel at 68 on a slope above the homestead under a cottonwood they had planted together the year after they married. She was not alone when she buried him. Rosie was there. Rosie's 4 children were there. Josiah Reed was long gone by then, and Mrs. Calloway and Earl Brunson and Judge Whitmore, and all the 100 people who had clapped her out of that courtroom in Lockhart. But Rosie was there, and Rosie's children, and the homestead was there, and the land was there, and the lamp in the window was there because Clara still lit it every night the way Samuel had taught her, so a rider in the dark could find his way home. She lived 3 more years after Samuel. She did not remarry. She did not need to. On her last night with Rosie sitting beside her bed, holding her good hand, the one that had not been burned 50 years before in a kitchen window latch, Clara Winslow Garrett opened her eyes one last time and looked at her daughter and smiled. "Rosie girl? Mama. You came up fighting through the thorns." "Yes, Mama. Your daddies would be proud of you." "I know, Mama." "Rosie." "Yes, Mama. Tell your children. Tell them all of it. Tell them the fire. Tell them the road. Tell them the courtroom. Tell them the goat shed. Tell them every word. Don't you let them forget." "I won't, Mama. I won't ever let them forget." Clara closed her eyes. Good girl. She did not open them again. And somewhere on a cold, bright road half a century before a tall, lean man on a dark bay horse had reined up in the smoke and had not ridden past. And because he had not ridden past, a widow had lived, and a baby had lived, and a line of Garretts and Winslows had lived after them, and a 40-acre piece of Brazos Bottom land had stayed in the hands of the woman it had been bought for, and a lamp had burned in a window for 71 years. No man ever took Clara Winslow's child. No man ever took Clara Winslow's land. No man ever took Clara Winslow's name from her own mouth. She kept every one of them. She kept them by standing up in the ashes with a knife in her hand, and she kept them by walking into a courtroom with a 3-day-old baby. And she kept them by riding a Texas road with a rifle across her saddle and a burned palm on the trigger. And she kept them in the end by loving a good man back when a good man loved her first, and by raising up a daughter who knew from the cradle that her mama had been stronger than the fire. And that is the whole truth of Clara Winslow, and it is the only truth that ever mattered. She walked out of the ashes, and she did not walk back in. Not one day, not 1 hour, not 1 minute of the rest of her life. She walked forward. She walked home. And she stayed. and she stayed, and she stayed, and she stayed, and she stayed, and she stayed.